Welcome, everybody, to episode 5 of the Podca podcast. I'm Austin Bonfice.
I'm Jason Priebe.
And I'm Mike Challe.
Today, we got a couple interesting topics. We'll jump right in. Over this past weekend was the NFL draft. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about, how our Minnesota Vikings did and how the Packers did.
More importantly, how the Packers did, how they bettered themselves as a team, as a franchise, to really set themselves apart.
Well, they did do so well last year, first round exit.
Yeah, something to be said there. I did notice one team was picking at 11 and one team was picking at 25, so that might have something to say about how their seasons went.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, what we saw was the Green Bay Packers going from the number one QB in the NFC North to third, fourth maybe. I mean, second-year regression. He might even go the fourth.
I watched a fair amount of J.J. McCarthy tape, and it took me multiple games to realize he was a quarterback with the amount of throws he threw. That's a run-first football team, I guess.
When you're that efficient, doesn't have to throw the ball that much. And with throwing to Jefferson, I mean...
He's a classic. He's
on.
Perfect for Minnesota, though. I mean, he's going to handle the lights well. He's very anxious, as you saw. He's a big yoga, meditation guy.
You know, we like people with good hearts. Good heart. It's not about everything that happens on the field. You know, that's why that's loser talk. That's why we take good players like Aaron Jones. You know, he's a good guy, good person,
great guy.
Just does great things.
Walter Payton, Man of the Year candidate.
But you know, he came from a team that didn't like him, didn't appreciate him, and just kicked him to the curb after he's, worked there for him and tried to give everything he could.
Yeah, so, you won't hear any Aaron Jones slander from me. One of my favorite Packers of all time. So I draw the line there.
Well, so NFC North, who's gonna have the best QB this year?
It's Jordan Love. And I don't think it's particularly close. Let's go through why, right? Okay. Caleb Williams, I think, is going to have a great career. Obviously, everyone thinks that number one pick. No one thinks they're ever going to bust.
I'm going to put it out there. He's going to bust.
The Bears are a losing franchise, never had a 4,000-yard passer. Justin Fields, not the guy. Moved on to Pittsburgh. Jared Goff, great guy. Can he do it again? We'll see.
He was a number one pick too, wasn't he? Wasn't Jared Goff a number one pick also?
Yeah, many years ago from Cal. And then J.J. McCarthy. Here, I'll power rank him. Jordan Love, Jared Goff, Caleb Williams. A big gap. And then probably J.J. McCarthy.
What about Sam Darnold?
Could be the guy.
We're not even starting.
People forget Sam Darnold is like...
No, he's a number one overall. He's number 3, wasn't he?
Number 3. Number 3.
He's been in the league for what feels like an eternity, and he is 26 years old.
Yeah.
So
he's just getting...
Jury's still out on Sam Darnold.
Just getting started.
Moving off the player side and more into the financial side, the first overall pick of the 2024 draft will sign a 4-year deal worth $38.5 million with a signing bonus of about $25 million. Thoughts?
Hope he's got an advisor.
Yeah. You wonder about like some of these people, like, if you're picked in the first round, you think you're set? Financially, you play for 4 years, you get that, the 32nd pick of the first round, it's got a contract value of $12.5 million. You think they can make that last, or do you think, the lifestyle catches up to them?
I don't think it lasts.
Yeah,
I don't even think it's necessarily the lifestyle catching up. I think it's you hear that number and right off the bat you got to go, okay, they're losing half of that to taxes.
Yeah.
So say they're netting $6 million.
Yeah,
and in Illinois,
$6 million, $7 million.
I think
they're only 20 years old.
Yeah.
Like that's not enough. That's not enough.
Unless you live really cheap.
I mean,
yeah.
yes, you could theoretically live extremely frugally and you can make that work. Do I think most people that are in that type of situation go, I'm going to be content trying to make $6 million last for the next 60 years, 70 years, 80 years? Not a chance.
The statistics would back that up too. There was a Sports Illustrated article that said 78% of NFL players and 60% of NBA players face serious financial hardships after retirement. Now, granted, that data is going to be skewed because we're talking about first-round contracts. That's all players, right?
The squad
But you see a lot of players, whether they don't know, maybe they don't know what they're doing, maybe they're trusting the wrong people. Sad
culture too. I mean, you ever see like sports interviews of like these rookie dinners they make make their team pay for, and it's like a $40,000 trip to a steakhouse or something like that. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah, I think, most of us are going to look at that and be like $6 million or a $12 million contract. How can't they make that work? How can't they do that? But I think, to a certain extent, lifestyle creep is real, and I also think
it's just on another level.
They have a lot more expenses.
Yeah.
They don't get to drive home every night. You know, they're gonna do a lot of traveling. There's a lot of time away from home. Like, they've got expenses probably to maintain where they're at.
It's a big variation of keeping up with the Joneses. Really, they're not keeping up with their neighbor necessarily, but everyone in that locker room is a multimillionaire pretty much.
The lowest NFL Players Union, the lowest salary for a rookie is $795,000 a year.
Exactly. I do think it's always fun to see. Like there was a piece last year on Gardner Minshew, and he was driving like a conversion van. That stuff is fun. You don't need the latest and the greatest, but
that is how, if you want to make your money work, he's probably got a plan. He's probably not driving that because that's his vehicle. That is his favorite vehicle. He's driving that because
it's practical.
He's got a plan in place. Yeah. It's practical. Yeah.
Conversion van for one. Come on.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You can get a lot of stuff in there. All your gear, no problem.
It's true.
I mean, that's the thing. Their careers aren't that long.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, yes, we're used to our stars that are, 10, 15 years, but there's a lot of guys where that career is well under 10 years.
Well, no, it's not even 10 years. The truth of the matter is most players drafted this weekend will not see a second contract.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
so you got to have a plan. Got to be thinking about what you're doing right away.
Yeah.
Speaking of spending money, the average tax return, tax refund, and how it gets spent.
Yeah, we can pull these charts up. Some of these charts are a little bit dated from the final numbers of the tax returns are out. These charts came out in like February, posted by Wall Street Journal. Source is IRS with some Morgan Stanley research surveys and things along that line. But tax refunds a little bit behind previous years in size, but still pretty sizable. One of the things I always consider that I've seen firsthand with our clients is maybe a little bit surprise tax bill from higher interest rates. Interest income is all of a sudden a factor again, and I think that's factored in, especially some of these higher net worth tax players.
I think that definitely caught people off guard this year. If you're sitting on a lot of cash, or even if you're not even sitting on cash specifically, but you have that non-retirement account and you've got money in there, your bond portfolio made a lot more in interest this year, so a lot more in dividends. So there was definitely probably a little bit of a shock on your tax hit, your tax liability. If you were used to a bigger refund, it was probably less this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another interesting thing from this article, some survey data. So you got to kind of take survey data with a grain of salt. Like always, just because somebody says they do something doesn't always mean that they actually did that. But we got this chart up here with how people plan to spend their refund or how they spent it. To So interestingly enough, this is also broken down by income levels. 42% of people who made under $50,000 plan to save their tax refund, while 50% of them that made over $100,000 plan to save it. 40% of people who made under 50 plan to pay off debt. 42% of people who made over 100 plan to pay off debt. Any other things on here kind of stuck out to you on what these people plan to spend it on?
I thought it was funny that gambling had its own. We talked about gambling in one of our last episodes. It had its own category here.
People who make 50 to 99, that's your, kind of like what we talked about in the last episode. That, generally higher earner, male, millennial, sports betting, casino gambling.
I would have expected those making over 100,000 to be a higher percentage saying they would put it in the savings. I would have expected a bigger gap. Under 50,000 to over 100,000, it's 8% difference between whether or not they're going to save some or not. I would have expected that to be a little bit higher. And even on the flip side, the pay off debt, it's 40% for those with under 50,000 and 42% with those over 100,000. I would have expected there to be a little bit bigger gaps there. I would have expected pay off debt for those under 50,000 to be well over 60%. And those over 100,000 to be a little bit less because probably carrying less credit card debt. Right. It's probably the immediate kind of debt you think about when you go say pay off debt. Not the longer term mortgage or even a car loan. I don't think you go, oh, I got a tax refund. Let me make an extra payment to it. That pay off debt. I would usually look at that and be like, they're paying off credit cards or they're paying off student loans. So I would have expected that to be higher. A higher percentage, bigger difference there.
I think it's interesting that, people making under 50,000, not surprised that you see more everyday purchases, but, less on vacations, more on, purchasing clothes, big ticket items, things along those lines, and then hardly any in home improvements. Maybe that's because they don't own a home compared to people with 50 to 100,000 income, larger portion of them owning homes and putting money into the house.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot more sense. The everyday purchases, that when I look at that category, that aligns up with what I would have expected. If you would have said, hey, make a graph of what this looks like, that fits right where that fits the narrative, I think.
This graph also was a select everything, correct?
Yeah, it was. You can pick more than one, right?
So these numbers, over 100%.
Well over 100%. Yeah. They're definitely doing more than one thing with their refund.
And survey data, right? How do you plan to spend it,
And that's probably a good thing, that they're doing more than one thing
for sure
with it, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you get a chunk of money that you're not expecting, you don't need to, most people wouldn't just put it all in one place.
Yeah. Paying off debt, putting some in savings and spending a little bit, that's...
The under 50,000 group to difference in the put money into savings and the 100,000 plus, that difference of only 8%, I think is a big example of lifestyle creep as you make more money. It's not that much many more people saving and on double or more of the income. So.
Next topic. So, we're going to talk about a little client case, a little would you rather debate here. We have Big Dog coming back from last episode.
Big Dog.
And the return of Jerry. So, Mike, do you want to tell us who Big Dog is?
Yeah, hold on. Big Dog is the one with $1.5 million in the IRA.
Yep.
Okay. So Big Dog has $1.5 million in an IRA.
All pre-tax.
All pre-tax. Jerry, bless his heart, has a $5,000 a month pension.
No other retirement savings. $5,000 a month in income, nothing else, or $1.5 million in a pre-tax IRA.
Just a classic would you rather.
To tell you guys how we came up with these numbers, we're using the 4% rule as a distribution strategy. So, 4% of $1.5 million per year is about $5,000 a month. So from a portfolio management perspective, those two are about the same, but from a retirement lifestyle quality of life, those two things are very different, and they mean different things to different people. So, Mike, would you rather be Big Dog or Jerry?
In this case, I'd rather be Big Dog. I'll tell you why. It really comes down to you're going to spend more in your early years, and I want to have that flexibility to do so. Mm-hmm. I'm good giving up the guaranteed income stream for, say you retire at 65, even though people are actually retiring earlier.
We're assuming 65 retirement on this one as well for both.
So you retire at 65. I want to have that flexibility to spend more, say, in the first 10 years when I'm able to do more active. There's a bunch of data that shows that seniors 65 to 80 are more active than ever. And I don't want to be limited by the $5,000 a month.
Spend more now, delay your Social Security a couple years, delay till 70, and then fade off into the sunset.
Exactly. And you're taking on market risk for it, but I'm comfortable doing that over the long term.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Jason?
Well, the problem you have with Big Dog is he's feeling really good. Because he's got he gets that statement once a month, once a quarter, and he opens it up. And
no, Big Dog ain't looking at his statement.
That's even worse. That's even worse.
Yeah, Big Dog.
He's at the golf course. Big Dog's feeling way too good about having $1.5 million. And that's a great, healthy chunk to retire on. But I think it's really easy to overspend past what you can afford to spend and not drain your assets down.
$1.5 million before taxes feels like a lot of money.
Yeah.
And after taxes, it tends not to be quite as much.
Right. I think it's a struggle to hold back that spending, especially when you get the one-off items. Oh, I want to get that new car. Well, you're going to have to take a loan out on it, and you're going to have to keep it within your budget that we set. And I think with $1.5 million having a lump sum, it gets too easy for them, too tempting to just pull that $50,000 off to buy the new car, or pull the $100,000 off, whatever they're buying, right? And all of a sudden now, instead of having $1.5 million to draw on, you're down to 1.4. And I think that's the biggest thing that.
Even less once you pay the tax bill.
Right. That you have to be very, very careful of, right? Yeah. And so $1.5 million in an IRA account versus a $5,000 pension. I think the person with a $5,000 pension is going to be a much better consistent spender and more conscious of what they spend their money on versus somebody with a bucket of $1.5 million is going to be more likely to splurge because, well, I got this pot of money behind me.
It all depends on the person.
It does depend on the person, but I think that's
it's not as much as a financial topic as a behavioral topic.
Absolutely.
The classic, I need $30,000 to buy a new boat, and then 6 months later, I need $45,000 to buy a new truck to pull my new boat, and then I need a bigger lake to drive my new boat around on, so I need a new cabin. I need $250,000.
I need $10,000 for a new lift.
Exactly. Yeah. Next thing you know, you got $600,000 left, and you're on Social Security, right? You have to.
But you have a boat.
You're drawn out.
But you have a boat.
What do they say? The two happiest days of a boat owner's life: the day they buy the boat and the day they sell it.
Yep.
Yeah. In a perfect world, you can do a mix of both, right? And there's ways to optimize your Social Security and use maybe some guaranteed income annuity or something like that to give you a nice mix of guaranteed income for your later years and also enough flexibility for your earlier years. So I think in reality, it really, like you guys said, depends on the person, but there's solutions to solve these issues. Maybe $2,000 of guaranteed income from some sort of income annuity, and then you have $1 million $1,000,001 to spend, and then at age 70 turn Social Security on along with an income annuity, and then you kind of have your basic needs met.
It also depends on the client's goals too.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't talked about that a ton, right? Do they want to leave a legacy? Because impossible to do so with a pension.
Unless you save your pension, but yeah.
I think in both cases,
it's gonna be an uphill battle.
Whether you're Big Dog or you're Jerry. I think what we're doing is we're going, I hope both of them came to us before 65.
Yeah.
Because I look at both of these situations, and if you take them on their face, you go, well, Big Dog needed to come to us 5 to 10 years ahead of time so that we could transition some of this IRA money into after-tax dollars, whether that's Roth or just a simple non-retirement account, right? So that they've got a little bit more flexibility. On the flip side,
should have been saving, frankly, a little bit pre-tax
or cash, right?
Or sorry, after tax.
Yeah. Right. On the flip side, Jerry,
same thing.
If all he's got is a pension, you're really handcuffed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all you have. He should have come to us 5 to 10 years sooner, and we'd get a little bit of money started to save up, right?
Some liquidity.
What do you do? What do you do if you need a new roof and you're Jerry and all you have is $5,000 a month coming in? You're gonna not get a new roof on your house for
go to the
2
bank
months?
and have to get a loan for every little item that is outside of your budget.
A little bit of a HELOC, pay the 10%.
I mean that's essentially what you have to do, right? You're gonna assume that both of them have a house paid off, and they're gonna have to, Jerry's going to have to put everything on a line of credit and slowly pay it off over time.
Okay, so if you had to choose personally for yourself.
If I had to choose, I'd be Big Dog.
Same. Austin?
I'd probably be Big Dog too, but
I have confidence in my control over spending.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing.
You do Roth conversions. You have more optionality in your tax control, more flexibility.
Sure. Yeah. Like you said earlier, delay Social Security.
But if I was Big Dog, I probably would have sought an advisor at age 58 and started preparing for my retirement in 7 years, maybe even 55, and I would have a good amount of cash saved, some non-qualified assets built up.
So Big Dog, if you're listening, you know where to find us.
Yeah.
What do we got next?
Talk a little bit about markets. We got a chart here from JP Morgan's Guide to the Markets. This chart's updated daily. It's April 29th today as we're recording this, but this chart is from Friday. So that's April 26th.
There's a lot going on here. What's going on in this chart?
So what we're showing is
Explain
annual.
It to me like I'm a 5-year-old.
All I see is a lot of red numbers, a lot of lines up, a lot of lines down, a lot of black numbers. What is going on here?
Do you mean to tell me, Jason, that you didn't look at this ahead of time? Shame on you.
No, not at all.
What we got here is we have annual calendar year returns. Those are the gray bars, and then the red dots on the bottom is intra-year drawdowns. So how much the market dropped from highs to the bottom that it had in the year. Reason we want to bring this up is because we've had a little bit of market volatility lately.
Hold on. Can I just go through? Can I read off these red numbers?
Yeah.
Just so everyone can understand what we're seeing here.
Yep.
Red numbers are the
that's
the max
average.
Drawdown, right?
From all-time highs. Yeah,
from all-time highs in each year.
Correct.
So if I go back to, what is this, 2008, we are minus 49%, minus 28%, minus 16%, minus 19%, minus 10%. And we had a couple of years minus 6 and minus 7, minus 12, minus 11, minus 3, minus 20, minus 7, minus 34. We had a minus 25, a minus 10. Those are some big drawdowns.
Yeah.
I mean,
for sure. Very, very rarely do you see that the gray bar where the year ended at its low, right? At the drawdown low. We almost always recover off of these lows, and there's drawdowns in every single year. These little market corrections we have are completely normal.
We've already had
a 5% drawdown year to date.
We've already had over 20 days in 2024 at all-time highs, at new all-time highs.
Yeah.
that's
Volatility is normal.
Let me look at I don't know what year this is on the chart here. Probably like 20. I think it's 2013. Max drawdown is 6%. I mean, that's about where we are today. 6% off highs, a little bit less than that. And the calendar year return for that year was 30%. Imagine capitulating when the market was down 6% because, oh my gosh, it's an election year. We don't know who's going to win. What's happening overseas, geopolitical tensions, all this stuff. You sold when the market was down 6% and it ended the year up 30%.
Well,
you're going to feel like an idiot.
And
let's go back to 2020. Market was down minus 34%. Market finishes up 16.
Yeah. It recovered before you got that next statement.
If you don't just ignore what's happening in the market and let your money go over time, you are not going to get market-like returns.
And we see this time of year a lot with clients. It's earnings season. You got companies reporting, 25 companies will report a day, and you turn on the news and they say, I don't know, Netflix subscriber growth falls or whatever it is, and all these posts and news articles designed to make you click the ads and scare you, and they just want you to provide some liquidity to the market. They want you to sell so people can scoop up and buy. Well, the TV company wants you to click the ads, but
fear sells.
Yeah, fear sells, right? Fear makes you read the article. That second line on this chart, despite average intra-year drops of 14.2%, annual returns are positive in 33 out of 44 years. Have a plan, stick to the plan. Don't pay attention to the news. Don't pay attention to the day-to-day market moves, and that's how you make it through a retirement with investment assets.
And I think we bring this up right now because since October of 2023, all the way until our clients got their statement at the end of the quarter of March, your portfolios have gone up a lot. We've all really appreciated what's happened in the market for the last 6 months, okay? And we point that out as a prime example to go, I'm sure at some point in the next several months, we're going to have a drawdown. It's normal, especially after such a large run. Don't get afraid that you're going to remember your quarter end, your March end number, and all of a sudden now a month or 2 months later, you look at it and you're like, oh, I'm way off of these highs. Oh my gosh, what's going on? The economy's slowing down.
World War III.
An election. Like, there's nothing good happening. What are we doing? We need to get out. We need to do something. Like, we don't need to do anything.
There's always going to be uncertainty.
There was uncertainty through the entire up market that we had.
Absolutely.
Quite frankly, it'd be really easy to be like, I don't know why the market is running like it is if you just look at the headlines of everything. But if you dig in beyond the headlines, and I think we've got a little bit on this upcoming a little bit more, but the reason the market is moving in the direction that it's moving is because we continue to see the economy being pretty darn healthy, especially if you look at unemployment rates. They're still under 4%, right? I mean,
companies are making money.
They're making money.
S&P earnings are at all-time highs. Have never been higher. That probably why the market ran up so much in October is since October, we were pricing in these strong earnings. And we're seeing that now. Just stick to a plan.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of elections, it's not directly election related.
Sticking to a plan.
But it is sticking to a plan.
That's a tough transition.
Speaking of sticking to a plan, who doesn't stick to a plan is Congress with these new beneficiary RMD rules. They can't seem to figure out what they want to do.
You don't have to stick to a plan if there is no plan.
Yeah.
What are we? They're 4 years since enacting the new beneficiary.
It was effective in 2020, correct?
I think so.
At least they let us know somewhat earlier this year.
Yeah, this year they're letting us know what they let us know a month in. Yep. Hey, by the way, we're not going to enforce our rules again. This has been a big one. Beneficiary RMDs, you have 10 years to take the money out of the account. It's been ruled that you're supposed to take a life expectancy payment every single year.
Rapidly. So the IRS regulation says you have to take money out of the IRA at least as rapidly as you were supposed to under the old rules.
But they keep telling us to ignore the rule, and they're not going to penalize us if we don't do it. So if we're tax planning, we may or may not take money out of a Benny IRA to realize taxes. Depends on where your tax situation is. And I think the biggest one that this falls into are those that inherit money within 10 years of retirement, right? So they're making big money right now. Yep. Highest earning years as an employee or whatever they're making the money in. And we want to take out as little as possible, knowing that in their first few years of retirement, we can drain the beneficiary IRA at that point.
Correct.
So that's where this helps the most. But if you do have a beneficiary RMD, know that you can plan a little bit more than you thought you could.
Yeah, I think a huge trap some people are falling into. What if you inherit this money? You're retired and you inherit this Benny IRA money at 63, but you're not taking it out. You're living off of something else. Maybe you turn Social Security on or something like that, and you're not taking anything out. You're going to turn 73, year 10. You're going to have to take your regular RMD plus 100% of this inherited account value, and your tax. Yes. You might be at a 32% tax bracket all of a sudden, and you got all the cascades, the IRMAs, the Social Security taxes, and all that kind of thing. So
Medicare premiums skyrocket.
Make sure if you have inherited IRAs, you are
figuring out when you're going to take it out and how.
Yeah, make sure
having a plan, unlike
having
Congress.
A plan. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of different ways to plan. One thing we've done with some of this stuff is if you have a little bit of earned income, but under IRA rules, take the money, take out $7,000 from the Benny IRA and make a traditional IRA contribution. Move it out of an account that has a 10-year rule into an account that's off of your life.
We have a client that inherited has a Benny IRA and then lost their job at the beginning of the year. Might be a good, very very much a good time to look at taking some money out with.
Yep, income isn't going to be as high as we thought it was. So boom, here we go. And that's having a conversation, right?
Yeah.
I think just a good reminder: make sure you're communicating with your advisor. If something's happening or something's changing, let them know. Even if they come back and like, cool, thanks for giving us a heads up. There's nothing we need to do. At least it's known, it's out there. You have the plan for it. It's far better than finding out a month into the next year that something happened at year end and they never.
You see their tax return and they have negative taxable income.
Yeah, they never gave us the heads up that something had happened, that there was a transition, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking forward, it did seem that they were going to enforce it in 2025 and beyond.
It looked that way in 23 as well,
does.
Though.
Yes.
But we'll see.
Fingers crossed that
at some point
Congress
on
wants
paper,
to do something.
At some point, they have to enforce it, you would think. Otherwise, why make the rule?
For them, I don't know how many people who have inherited. It'd be interesting to see people without inherited IRAs and people with inherited IRAs compared with how many people are working with advisors.
I think there's a lot of people with and that number is even going to grow with the aging population.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's just, how many people aren't doing any planning with these and have just let them sit and let them grow? And, how many people had grandparents
or even know that it's under a 10-year rule?
Yeah.
I mean, they just got the account, it's inherited.
They sit at a brokerage account at Vanguard or Schwab. And
think about, how many people had parents that were working with, some bank broker or some real transactional investment advisor, and the money moved into their name, and that advisor's maybe called them once or twice. They have no idea what the rules are. They don't know how much income you're making aside from what they asked you when they opened the account.
That bank advisor might not know the rules.
Yeah. All things to think about. My office has had attorneys call us to ask for help describing how these rules work, which to me is a little bit ridiculous, but then they billed the client for it, actually. True story.
I was going to say, did you bill them for the phone call?
The attorney billed the client after calling us, asking us how these new
That's insane.
RMD stretch rules work. We're like, are you kidding me?
That'd be like me going to college and billing my future employer.
Yeah.
Telling them, hey, I need to learn the information first.
Hey, can you do that? Asking for a friend.
Maybe we should go that way. Apprenticeships, way to go.
Yeah.
A lot of good ones out there. Speaking of Congress not knowing what they're doing or what's going to happen, the Biden has his spending budget out there proposal, which more than likely this is going to change a million times. But it also includes some tax proposal changes, and so just wanted to bring them up. I think it's important to understand what's out there and what's being talked about. I'm sure none of this will pass as is, but the fact that it's being talked about, I think, is just important to be aware of, especially when we're thinking about business owners out there, entrepreneurs. The first one right off the bat, capital gains rates. If you have over $1 million of income, your capital gains rate would go to your ordinary income. And I know right off the bat, everyone's like, okay, well, that's the top 0.4%
of filers last
filers.
year.
All right. So everyone's sitting here going, no big deal.
They've turned it off.
Right. They've turned it off. They're not listening. Okay. If you're a small business owner, turn us back on. The biggest impact we see with this is when it comes to monetizing your business at retirement. Normally, your business is the biggest asset you have. And when you go to sell it, you're usually going to sell it for more than $1 million. And instead of getting preferential capital gains treatment of 15 and 20%, under this proposal, anything over $1 million is now going to be taxed at over 43%.
44.1 or something like that, right?
Right, 44.1. If you're here in Minnesota, add on another 52, state tax on top of that.
53.
This has a huge impact on a lot of different situations. Small business owners.
Startup companies.
Stock options, right?
Yeah.
If you got some non-qualified stock options or incentive stock options or even RSUs in some situations, all of a sudden that cashless exercise option of exercising the option, selling some shares to pay the income tax on it, that causes a cascade of events, which again makes you just like Big Dog, might make you feel richer than you actually are after you tax adjust your wealth.
You could also flip this over. We're in Minnesota. There's a lot of farmers just outside of the cities.
Yeah, farmers.
You go to sell your land. A farmer wants to get out, and your mom and dad lived on a farm, and now you're selling that land. That's potentially a huge impact.
Huge impact, especially if your land is collateralized because you needed to buy a new combine or you needed to buy, a new farm vehicle or something like that. I mean, all of a sudden, some of these farmers might be in negative equity on their land when you tax adjust that. It's got to be some carve outs, and I'm sure we'll see them come. But
yeah, absolutely. I think I'm all for adjusting the loophole of capital gains on those who are consistently making a lot of money. My biggest concern we're seeing here is we're really going to need to start planning for small business owners, because I think there's a big difference between a small business owner having a one-time cash out of selling their business and the billionaires of the world that are
the CEOs of it.
Right.
It's affecting people that I don't think are intended to be overly affected.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Same with the no more 1031 exchanges is in that proposal. That's a huge boon to those who own real estate, who buy and sell, to have rentals and things like that. If you can't avoid tax consequences for selling property that you've owned and appreciated, that's going to have a fairly sizable impact, not just on those who are filing, but
prices of real estate.
Prices of real estate, yeah, absolutely. They've got to be impacted by this.
We already have a commercial real estate crisis. If these guys can't 1031 it, oof.
It's going to it would have an impact on the economy.
Yeah.
And so I don't think a lot of these are going to go through as is.
Was this the first draft of the policy?
It was the White House. They've came out with a couple different things. This is the big White House release, and of course, it's timely around election season. And
it's front page news. Yeah.
A lot of it's clickbait. What they're trying to show is that, hey, we want to make sure we're tax the wealthy, get rid of some loopholes. I'm not opposed to getting rid of some loopholes. I think we just need to make sure that.
Some of the language they use is a little bit like.
Yeah. You can tell it's more
cringy.
it's political. It's put out to be political. It's not language. Put out to specifically go into law at this point. But it's things that we want to be aware of and we want to be thinking about, because if any of these proposed changes ever did go through, and we've seen some of them go through, we want to be ready to make adjustments with clients right off the bat. And so if you're not working with somebody and you might fall into a situation like this, it's probably best you start figuring out what your
determine how it affects you, or if you don't know, ask. What
route are you going to take if you need to do it? Because going from a top 20% bracket on cap gains to over 40%, that's a huge difference.
Yeah, don't just put your head in the sand and say, "Oh, it's not going to pass. It's not going to pass. It's not going to pass." You got to have a plan on what we're going to do if it passes.
Yeah. Right.
How it affects you.
The other interesting thing in here is the 25% tax rate on unrealized capital gains, only for people over 100 million. So turn us off again. But the enforcement of that's gonna be a mess.
That will absolutely be.
They can't figure out how to enforce 10-year inherited RMDs. How are they going to figure out how to enforce unrealized capital gains? I have no idea.
I'm ready to sit back and enjoy that show, though.
It'll be interesting. And, of course, still got carried interest. I didn't see anything about step up and basis going away.
Nope, I didn't see that going away yet.
I thought I saw.
Did it?
Oh, man, I swore I saw that. They've talked about that for a long time.
They have talked about it. Don't quote me on that.
A lot of those 70, 75-year-olds in Congress probably want to wait till they die before they get rid of that rule.
They're going to pass that. They're going to pass that rule, but it won't take effect for 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this says the Biden budget would also end the stepped-up basis loophole for those with capital gains greater than $5 million for a single taxpayer.
All right.
So how does that work? Like you get your first $5 million in gains stepped up, and then after that you don't?
$10 million for joint.
Do I get to decide which $5 million I get stepped up?
Is it?
Because if I can avoid my real estate and the 1031 is still there,
right,
I'm good to go.
All this stuff takes longer than they say it's going to as well.
As you'd imagine, it doesn't say.
Yeah,
it's what we would like to call a gray area.
Yeah, there's one paragraph on it in this, and it just gives very broad strokes.
Wait until the IRS comes out with their proposed regulations, and then Congress can kick it down the road for 5 years.
They've talked about that step up in basis for a long time.
Yeah,
they have. I mean, they've talked about a lot of these things. Yeah. I think there's adjustments to be made. I don't think it should be black and white when we think about some of these different areas of where we're at, but they're they're good to be aware of. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, stay tuned. I'm sure future episodes we'll talk about this more as we get more color on it. If we get more color on it, we'll see.
Absolutely.
Any idea what we're talking about next?
I think we're going to talk a little bit more retirement planning in the next episode. A couple interesting statistics on retirement ages.
Those stats around retirement, and expected retirement ages, and when you actually retire. I mean, would you expect the expected retirement age to be older or younger than the actual retirement age?
Give me a time frame.
So
we're talking about today, or are we talking about future years?
So today, if you're 60 years old and your expectation is to retire at 65, do you think they're retiring before or after 65?
I know the answer, but I would have thought that people were more optimistic, so I would have expected actual to be later than expected.
We'll dive into this a little deeper on the next episode.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for listening to the podcast.